Ayaan Hirsi Ali just said the quiet part out loud. The Western world is sleepwalking into a crisis, and Jews are once again the canary in the coal mine. Let's watch.
I don't think there's anyone here who would disagree with you with regard to the source of many of our problems, multiculturalism, which I think we fell into by accident, and then we didn't know what to do about it. So we thought, well, isn't this wonderful? Let's champion it. That aside, okay, we abandon multiculturalism, and there's a reassertion of Christianity. Although, given that the Church of England is part of the problem, I'm not sure how we go about doing that in this country. Yeah. May I ask, in your experience and sort of talking to people, what sort of practical measures we might take in order to address the problems, perhaps going down the Swedish route, which they have now refound, having abandoned it long ago?
Thank you very much. And obviously, I also hope that there are more Muslims like you. Once upon a time, Britain used to be really famous for emancipating many nations, including Muslims. And so there you have the practical answer. When I talked about Christianity, my point was we have to go, when it comes to these big moral questions, maybe we should seek the answers and trace our way back to Christianity. But when it comes to the very practical policy conundrums, I said in my speech, we have to go back to what unites us. It's the insistence on the policy measure that is proposed and that we're about to embark on to be the greatest good for the greatest number of people, to think about all of us together in this instead of splintering it up. And so right now, the problem I see in Europe, I see it in Britain, is that there is the political leadership of today is very much on the multicultural side, and the political structures make it that parties rely on different identity groups to cobble together a coalition or a majority. And so with that in place, I think the answer is probably not going to come from the political leadership of today, but I think that political leadership can be challenged. And I draw a great deal of hope from the last election in America. And why do I do that? Because the election victory of the Republican Party under Trump shows, when you look at the demographics, that it is every race, every gender, it is the world's richest man, but also some of the poorest people in America, all voted for that direction, for the idea of America first, not my little group first. And so I don't think the sentiment, the national sentiment in the UK or in France or Germany is any different. You always have these attempts at forming new parties and bringing about new political leadership. I've got my faith in the young people now, and I think it is, and that's the direction. The practical thing is to look for young people who are willing to oust the old corrupt guard through the ballot box. That would be,
Thank you for your talk. This is a little close to home, I guess, but how do we draw our young people back to their country and their culture if our governments refuse to teach them comprehensive and honest history?
That is a very, very good question, and that is part of the crisis, is this, that history is not taught well. Sometimes it's not even taught at all. And in many cases, only the negative story, the negative colonialism here and racism in America, those are amplified, and children leave the class thinking, I don't want to be a part of this history. I don't want to be a part of this nation. It's also immoral. I think that what we are seeing is the only way to change what's happening in schools is for parents to rise up and to take an interest in the education of their children. And it's the same in neighborhoods. It's for more and more citizens to show up and challenge the prevailing ethos and say, we don't want any of this. Again, I'm optimistic about it because I have seen this work in different places in America. The more apathetic communities are, the more their communities disintegrate. The more engaged they are, the more they can salvage what is the core of that community and keep it together. So it is really a fight worth having. And with the internet today, social media now is used mainly for negative things, but you can use social media for positive things. Jordan Peterson has started a series of, because they wouldn't let him teach in Toronto, he started his own university online. They wouldn't let me publish op-eds in some of these major, I started my own thing. Everybody's got their own podcast and their own, so I think Elon Musk is even coming with an online school, or it already exists. So there are different ways of being creative and in teaching history, in teaching science, in teaching geography, and in teaching common sense and commonality.
Hi, given that it's the left, Islamists, and the pro-Pali brigade that seem to be emulating the Nazis of old, the rising levels in antisemitism, the growing attacks on the Jews that seem acceptable now and justified and funded by the media, how do we combat that?
I'm very sorry. I have a hard time. Hearing. I think it might be a mic thing.
Sorry.
And please speak slowly, yeah.
Given that it's the left, Islamists, and the pro-Pali brigade that seem to be emulating the Nazis of the old, the rising levels in antisemitism, the growing attacks on the Jews that seem acceptable and justified by society as a whole now, funded by the media, how do we combat that?
Antisemitism within the right is banned, and antisemitism within the left has been made acceptable. Is that the question?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, because antisemitism there was someone who said that antisemitism from the right is like having a heart attack. You know they want to kill you. Antisemitism from the left is always shrouded in this language of justice and what seems appealing, fairness, and that makes it very subtle and insidious.
She makes a very, very important point here. There are some people, you know who they are, right? The KKK, we know exactly who they are. They say who they are, they act like who they are, we know what they're about. They're far, far less dangerous than people who couch their anti-Semitism or all other forms of hate or corruption of ideas in some virtuous language. They become much more dangerous because you don't know the devil that's in front of you in many cases.
I have a friend who said he couldn't understand why so many Jewish people supported identity politics or multiculturalism, because it couldn't be worse for Jews. Jews are white, successful, and very much attached to their religious roots, some of them. And then, of course, there's the state of Israel. It's everything that identity politics people hate. So anti-Semitism on the left, I think, is much more insidious, it's much more lethal, and it's now become intertwined. It's allied itself with radical Islamist anti-Semitism, which I think today in 2024 is the most lethal form of anti-Semitism on the ground. I'm not saying that anti-Semitism from the right has gone away. It hasn't. But if you say in order of priority, which one of them is the most lethal one, I would say it's the Islamist one and then the leftist identity politics one, because the narrative of the leftist, you can eliminate Israel by making the argument that it has no legitimacy to exist because it's a settler colonial enterprise. And what do you do? What should you do with settler colonial enterprises? You should uproot them. They don't, whereas I suppose a right-wing anti-Semite will simply look a Jew in the eye and say, I hate you and you ought to be eliminated. It is just these two different ways of looking at them. And today, the real threat is coming from Islamists combined with the left.
Thank you. It's such a pleasure to hear you speak. I think I speak on behalf of everybody that it's quite cathartic to have your sort of straight talking common sense. I just wanted to ask you about Islamophobia, because I know this is something that is obviously very close to home for you, that accusations of Islamophobia are accusations of blasphemy, and those are lethal. This government has shown an interest, before it was in power, and now it is in power, in adopting a definition of Islamophobia. And I wonder if that's something that you fear, and given the horrible state of this government, what you perhaps fear most from the next 5 years. Thank you.
Islamophobia is a manufactured term. And it's been manufactured. There's a lot of effort. It came from Iran and it came from Islamists in the Middle East, but it only succeeded in the UK. Connor Tomlinson, right behind you, has written this piece in Carriage Media. Please look it up, where he traces back to this Runnymede organization in adopting this term, and the way some of these Islamists are saying, why don't we, you see how they have, those who fight for the rights of homosexuals have this word homophobia. Why don't we say Islamophobia? And Islamophobia is an attempt to shut down any critical conversation or scrutiny of radical Islam. It is, if I want to comment on what's going on in radical Muslim mosques, madrasas, in the indoctrination of young people, turning them away from our way of life while they live here, I'll be accused of Islamophobia and I'll be shut down. If I want to talk about the grooming gangs, that's Islamophobia, and that's going to be shut down. There is nothing that relates to the subversive efforts of the Islamists in the UK that you can speak about if you adopt Islamophobia. You can't cite from the Quran, you can't cite from the Hadith, you can't refer to the Prophet Muhammad, you can't bring the act of violence and the ideas that motivate and incentivize the violence. You can't bring them together because you will be committing Islamophobia. Barack Obama, when he was president, decided to ditch the word Islamic extremism and call it violent extremism. Violent, yes, I can see the violent, but extremist in what? And that is exactly where they want things to go, so that they can actively convert people, actively radicalize Muslims, actively carry on towards their vision of introducing Sharia law. To ban it is political vandalism. It's beyond censorship, because there is censorship, yes, and the government should not be censoring. But in this case, you are basically empowering a radical subversive agenda, and you are the government with taxpayer money. And I think it's something we should fight with every fiber of our bodies, unless we want to look like Kabul.
Very, very powerful comments about what Islamophobia is. It's a mask, it's a cover-up. That's all it is, to shut down anyone that's saying anything against Islam, and it's not possible to have an objective conversation, and therefore it is a wall that stands firmly to protect the dangers of what Islam offers in its aggressiveness against people who don't believe like them. And that's a very dangerous thing to do. And unfortunately, in the West, we become easily ashamed when we're called, any of these names. Racist. If someone would call me a racist, you can call me whatever you want. I'm talking about the idea, truth, and I'm not going to shut down truth because of name calling. Right? Makes no difference what you call me. Let's talk about the idea. And Islamophobia is all about a word that shames Westerners so that they're terrified to even go there, and then everyone just protects that which is the greatest danger to them.